Welcome, my dear guests, to the captivating expanses of my story. Chapter 2000. 2218, the frosty breath of the cosmos enveloped the imposing settlement ship Ekaterinburg as it approached the target world. Baron Alexei Volkov's heart pounded as his gaze fell through the viewing hatch onto Scifo-Ural. An azure glow enveloped the planet, shimmering gently in the light of the distant solar star. "We're almost there, Baron," reported Captain Elena Petrova. Her voice sounded tense but determined. "Landing is planned in 2 hours. We're timing it right with the planetary shield gap." Alexei nodded silently. He knew that the next few days would be crucial. 1 million lives rested in the ship's cryo capsules, ready to colonize a new home. But only a fraction of them would awaken immediately. "How many will we wake up first?" he asked. Elena glanced at her datapad. 200,000 is planned over 3 months, all survivors of the harsh training program. Alexei remembered the brutal selection process. Only 20 of 100 applicants had made it through the 6-month training. He had made it by the skin of his teeth, despite his newly conferred title of nobility. The Ekaterinburg slipped through the gap in the shield and broke through the atmosphere. Alexei clung to his seat as turbulence shook the craft. Through the window, he saw the landscape spread out below them. Endless moorland crisscrossed by crystalline formations that glistened in the light. "Landing in 5 minutes," Elena announced. "All systems normal." Alexei took a breath. The joint project between Ecosphere Solutions and Neogen Pharmaceuticals was approaching its most critical moment. Supplying the colonists would be an enormous challenge until they could become self-sufficient. With a dull thud, the ship touched down on the surface. Silence spread, interrupted only by the quiet hum of the engines. "Welcome to Scifo-Ural," Elena said quietly. The colony ship Ekaterinburg, a colossal marvel, was nestled in a basin of Scifo-Ural. Its massive landing legs were firmly rooted in the boggy ground, while the ship's hull soared like a futuristic citadel in the pale green sky. The surrounding moorlands, adorned with sparkling crystal formations that mirrored the distant star's gentle glow, only added to the ship's grandeur. To the east rose the imposing mountain range of the Ural Mountains, their rugged peaks shrouded in an eternal mist. The jagged rock faces seemed to watch over the valley like silent sentinels, where the future of a new civilization was now taking shape. Baron Alexei Volkov stepped out of the airlock and breathed in the alien atmosphere for the first time. The smell was earthy and damp, with a hint of something indefinable that reminded him of old libraries. The floor gave way slightly under his feet, a carpet of purple moss that gave off a faint glow with every step. "Fascinating," he murmured, and bent down to take a sample. Captain Elena Petrova joined him, her gaze wandering over the landscape. "The perfect place for our colony. The basin offers natural protection, and the proximity to the mountains ensures our water supply." Alexei nodded in agreement. "Yes, and the plain here gives us enough room for expansion." He pointed to a hill at the edge of the valley. "We could set up our control center up there. From there, we would have a good overview of the settlement." A strange melodic howl rose in the distance. The 2 new arrivals exchanged worried glances. The native fauna, Elena explained, "Our preliminary scans have detected some interesting life forms. We need to be careful." Alexei watched as the first shuttles slid out of the belly of the Ekaterinburg and landed on the surface with the necessary equipment. Technicians in protective suits immediately began setting up habitat modules and power generators. The mist from the mountains slowly crept into the valley, shrouding the scene in a mysterious veil. The crystal formations began to glow more brightly in the twilight, bathing the surroundings in a surreal bluish light. "We should start by waking up the first colonists," Alexei said. "Night will fall soon, and I want us to have at least a basic infrastructure by then." Elena nodded and activated her communication device. "All teams, speed up the setup of the life support systems. We'll start awakening the first colonists in an hour." Alexei looked again over the valley that would soon be their new home. The challenges ahead of them were daunting, but he also showed determination. This was the start of something big, and he was determined to make it a success. Selena Schultz put the last brushstroke on the canvas and stepped back. The Plagio system unfolded before her in all its cosmic splendor. The scarred planet, Claude.AI, hovered in the foreground, its jagged surface a silent witness to ancient forces. Behind it loomed the majestic gas giants, their rings glittering in the distant star's light. Between them, the newly built outpost hovered like a tiny lighthouse in the infinity of space. Lena took a deep breath and let her gaze wander over the painting, the colors of space. Deep black interspersed with misty blues and purples, blended into a fascinating symphony on the canvas. She had tried to capture the awe she felt every time she saw a new universe. A knock on the door of her cabin snapped her out of her thoughts. "Come in," she called as she put her brush and palette aside. Viktor Petrov, her first officer, entered. His eyes widened at the sight of the painting. "Impressive, Captain. You've captured the system perfectly." Lena smiled. "Thank you, Viktor. What's the status of things?" "The outpost now looms majestically in orbit around Plagio-AI, a beacon of civilization amid the cosmic wilderness. The last systems came to life an hour ago, a network of energy and data pulsing through the structure. We've triple-checked everything, the ship and crew are ready. Captain, we only await your order to depart." Lena nodded thoughtfully and let her gaze wander over the screen one last time. The colors seemed to come alive in the dim light of her cabin. "Excellent. Time is of the essence. Viktor, the 34 CT system and its secrets await us." They left the cabin, the soft hiss of the closing door echoing through the corridor. Together, they made their way to the bridge through the busy corridors of the Susquehanna. The engine's hum mingled with the crew's muffled voices, who were feverishly making the final preparations for the imminent leap into the unknown. When the bridge doors opened, the conversations fell silent. Lena strode purposefully to the captain's chair and settled down, her hands sliding over the remarkable armrest. Her gaze fell on the main screen, where the Plagio system shimmered in all its glory. A vivid mirror image of her painting, but infinitely more powerful and awe-inspiring. "Status?" she asked the group. "All systems green," reported Yuri Volkov from the engineering station. "The hyperspace drive is operational. Navigation data for the 34 CTA system has been entered and checked," added Asher Singh. Lena nodded with satisfaction. "Very good. Prepare for the jump," Viktor informed the crew. While Viktor made the announcement, Lena let her eyes wander over the bridge again. Her crew worked like well-oiled clockwork. Everyone knew their job. She felt a mixture of pride and anticipation welling up inside her. "Jump sequence initiated," Asher reported. "Countdown in progress." Lena turned her gaze forward. "Let's see what the 34 city system has in store for us," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. The stars on the main screen began to blur as the Susquehanna plunged into hyperspace on its way to its next adventure. Myra Gupta sat in her office in the Imperial Senate and studied the documents on the desk before her. The hologram of a spaceship yard hovered over the papers, casting a bluish light on her concentrated face. A low hum announced the arrival of the representatives from Astromine Industries. The door slid open. Olga Petrov, the CEO of the mega corporation, entered the room, followed by Klaus Schmidt and Dr. Samira. Myra stood up and greeted the visitors with a nod. "Welcome. Please take a seat," said Myra, pointing to the waiting chairs. The 3 Astromine representatives took their seats. Olga Petrov leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with ambition. "Sector Governor Gupta, thank you for this meeting. Astromine Industries would like to make a unique offer to the Empire." Myra raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Klaus Schmidt cleared his throat and activated a hologram. It showed the construction ships, Ek Belarus and Ek Susquehanna. "As you know, these 2 ships are invaluable to the Empire's expansion," he began. We are proposing a joint venture where Astromin Industries either builds its own construction ships or buys into the existing ships. Myra folded her hands on the table in front of her. Her eyes wandered back and forth between the three representatives. An interesting proposal. What advantages do you see for the Empire? Dr. Samir Al-Fad leaned forward. With our resources and know-how, we could increase the efficiency of the construction ships by at least 30. We would also cover part of the costs for maintenance and operation. Myra nodded slowly. Her mind was working at full speed, weighing the pros and cons. And what do you expect in return? Olga Petrov smiled thinly. A fair share of the profits from the tapped systems, shall we say, 25. Myra's eyes narrowed slightly. She knew the business practices of the mega corporations only too well. That's a high price to pay for the Empire. How do you ensure that Kasach's interests are protected? Klaus Schmidt intervened. We understand your concerns, Senate President. That's why we propose that the Empire retains most of the shares, shall we say 60 for Kasach, 40 for Astromin. Myra leaned back in her chair. She thought of the many untapped systems waiting to be explored and colonized. Astromin's additional resources could considerably speed up the process. Your offer is interesting, she finally said, but I must discuss it with the Imperial Senate and Impreatrix Sevia. There are many factors to consider. Olga Petrov nodded understanding. Of course, we don't expect an immediate decision, but consider the possibilities, Sector Governor. We could expand the Kasach sector faster and more efficiently than ever. Myra stood up, a sign that the meeting was over. I will consider your proposal carefully and reply shortly. The Astromin representatives also stood up. Handshakes were exchanged, last words exchanged. As the door closed behind them, Myra was left alone, surrounded by holograms and the weight of a decision that could affect the Empire's future. Myra got to enter the Imperial Senate with the Astromin Industries proposal in her hand. Senators fell silent as she approached the lectern. In a firm voice, she explained the mega-corporations' offer to buy into the existing construction ships or build new ones. As soon as Myra's last syllable had faded away, a heated debate broke out in the Senate chamber. Senator Viktor Volkov, his face tense with determination, jumped to his feet. His voice echoed through the room. This alliance holds enormous potential for our defense. An expanded fleet not only guarantees protection, but also projects power. His eyes gleamed excitedly as he painted the vision of an imposing armada on the wall. Nadine Heimber, in her plain conclave robes, drew her brows together. Her fingers clutched the arm of her chair. We risk selling out our souls, she warned, her voice quivering. Astromin's influence could seep into our sacred lore like poison. Are we prepared to pay that price? A shrill laugh cut through the tense atmosphere. Rita Griffin's red curls, as wild as her temper, scoffed traditions. Ha! The future doesn't wait for procrastinators. This cooperation will catapult us to the top of the galactic hierarchy. Imagine how we could put the Almorans in the shade. Alexei Kuznetsov, the head of the Citizen Elite Union, leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with calculation. The market is our ally, he declared with conviction. Let Astromin bring in their capital, but under our watchful eye, strict regulations will protect our interests. Impreatrix Sevia Heimber sat motionless in her raised seat, her face an impenetrable mask of royal neutrality. But a spark flashed in the depths of her sapphire blue eyes, a barely perceptible sign of interest that only the most astute observers could miss. Admiral Paulina Romero stood up, her uniform as immaculate as ever. In firm voice, she explained, the military advantages of this corporation cannot be denied. However, we must take the utmost care to ensure that the ultimate command of our fleet remains firmly in the hands of the Empire. Any compromises in this regard could have fatal consequences. The hours dragged on like eons. Arguments clashed, sharp as laser fire in a cosmic battle. Myra Gupta stood steadfast in the eye of this verbal storm. She parried every question with the precision of a seasoned diplomat, explaining even the most complex details with a clarity that grudgingly impressed even her critics. When the agitated tempers finally calmed, Impreatrix Sevia rose with majestic grace. Her voice echoed through the hall. "Honorable senators, we have heard and weighed the arguments. The time has come to make a decision. Let us now proceed to the vote." An electric murmur ran through the hall like a shock wave. Myra felt her stomach tighten into a painful knot. Months of hard work and countless all-nighters culminated in this one fateful moment. With a soft hum, the holographic displays came to life. Myra's eyes darted feverishly over the flickering lights, following every incoming voice with the intensity of a hawk. The virtual bars filled agonizingly slowly, each second an eternity of waiting. Finally, the last display went out. Silence descended over the Senate. Impreatrix Sevia stood up, her face serious. "The Senate has decided," she announced. "A narrow majority has approved the proposal from Astramin Industries. They may buy into the 2 construction ships under the agreed conditions." A sigh of relief went through the chamber. Some senators cheered, others shook their heads in displeasure. Myra could feel the tension easing away from her. She had done it. Rita Griffin activated the holographic model of the gigantic gas giant in the 34 CT system. The complex plasma movements and magnetic field distortions pulsed in fascinating patterns before the tense crew's eyes. A low murmur went through the room as the detailed representations of the anomaly became visible. As you know, this extraordinary discovery was originally made by Commander Mariana Martin and the crew of the 8 Equinox. Their initial observations put us on the trail of this unprecedented phenomenon. What we see now confirms their suspicions and goes even further. She zoomed in on a particularly intense activity area where swirling plasma streams were moving in hypnotic patterns. The interactions between the plasma and the magnetic field create structures that should be impossible, according to our previous models. Rita explained, her eyes sparkling excitedly. But the most fascinating thing is that we have strong evidence that this is a life form. These entities seem to interact in a way that defies all known physics. Collective gasp went through the room, followed breathless silence. Dr. Chen, the lead astrophysicist, stepped closer to the hologram, his eyes wide. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to touch the dancing plasma formation life in the plasma of a gas giant. He whispered in disbelief, "That's just incredible. It contradicts everything we thought we knew about the origin and existence of life." Rita nodded gravely, her expression a mixture of scientific enthusiasm and awareness of the implications of her words. "Yes, it sounds incredible. But the data is clear, Dr. Chen. These plasma beings, if we can call them that, show all the signs of complex organized behavior. They react to external stimuli, adapt, and possibly even communicate with us as if we've discovered a living ecosystem that has adapted perfectly to the extreme conditions of a gas giant." She rotated the model and pointed to a series of concentric rings that emerged in the gas giant's turbulent atmosphere. These structures remained surprisingly stable despite the intense storms and turbulence. They adapt, communicate with each other. And even Navigation Officer Yuki Tanaka said, "But how can we be sure that this is actually life and not some previously unknown natural phenomenon?" Rita shook her head. "A valid question, Yuki. We had similar doubts at first. But the longer we analyze the data, the clearer it becomes. These plasma formations react to their environment, adapt and show patterns far beyond random or purely physical processes." Dr. Chen nodded in agreement. "The complexity and adaptability of these structures remind me of the swarm intelligence we can observe in terrestrial oceans, only on a much larger scale." "Exactly," Rita confirmed. We're dealing with a completely new type of life form that has adapted to the extreme conditions of a gas giant. The discovery of the equinox was just the beginning. Our further investigations have confirmed what Commander Martin already suspected. We are on the verge of one of the most significant discoveries in the history of xenobiology. An awed silence fell over the crew of the HFY Batuta. This discovery had enormous implications, and it would undoubtedly revolutionize our understanding of the universe and life itself. Elena Volkov stood on the balcony of the administration building in Knossos City and looked out over the vibrant metropolis. The city lights twinkle like stars in the twilight, a testament to the relentless progress of Citas Sim. Today was more than special. It was a historic day, as the colony's population had triumphantly surpassed the 10 million mark. Elena took a deep breath. The scent of swamp and exotic vegetation mingled with the metallic odor of industrial expansion. She thought back to the heated debate in the Imperial Senate that had preceded the establishment of the Citas Sim administration. Administrator Volkov. Her assistant's voice broke the silence, snapping Elena out of her thoughts. She blinked, the skyline of Knossos City blurring before her eyes for a moment. Yes, Victor? Elena turned, instinctively straightening her posture. The young man stood respectfully in the doorway, his face a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Festivities are prepared. Administrator. The citizens are already gathering in the main square. Security reports that the crowd is peaceful and festive. Elena nodded, a strong sense of responsibility and dedication shining in her eyes. Good, let's go. We shouldn't keep the population waiting. Not on such a momentous day. She reached for her uniform jacket, which was hanging over a chair, and put it on. She smoothed the fabric with practiced movements and checked her appearance on the window's reflective surface. They left the building and climbed into a glider. Elena watched the crowds thronging the streets as they flew over the city. Children waved flags with the coat of arms of Citas Sim. Musicians played traditional Kasach melodies. The glider landed on the edge of the main square. Elena, the figure of anticipation, stepped out and was greeted by thunderous applause. She walked to the stage, past rows of dignitaries and citizens, her every step a testament to the weight of her responsibility. Once at the podium, Elena raised her hands. The crowd fell silent in anticipation, and the murmur of conversation died away like a receding wave. A few moments ago, the square was a sea of voices and movement, but now it froze in tense silence. Citizens of Citas Sim, she began, her voice echoing across the square, clear and firm as steel. Today, we are not just celebrating our growth to 10 million inhabitants. We are celebrating the beginning of a new era for our colony, a turning point in the history of our world. Elena let her gaze wander over the gathering, taking in every face. In their eyes, she saw hope and pride, but also curiosity and a hint of uncertainty about the changes that were to come. The Imperial Senate, she continued, her voice carried with conviction, has authorized the establishment of the Citas Sim administration. This is more than a bureaucratic act. It is a milestone in our history, a shining sign of our unstoppable progress. It is recognition of our achievements, our perseverance, and our shared vision for the future, a vision that each one of you has contributed to. Cheers erupted. Helena waited for it to die down before continuing. To properly honor this day, I declare June 28th an official holiday on Citas Sim, effective immediately. May it always remind us of our achievements and inspire us to accomplish even greater things. The crowd applauded frenetically. Fireworks exploded in the sky. Thousands of colorful sparks rained down on the city. Elena watched the scene with a sense of pride and responsibility. She knew that consolidating the imperial presence in the Kasach sector depended on her success here. But at this moment, she allowed herself to enjoy the fruits of her hard work. The space around the asteroid LA4JD8 in the 34 city system glittered with countless stars. The Susquehanna hovered majestically next to the jagged rock, its outer hull reflecting the pale light of the distant star. Lena Schultz stood on the bridge and intently watched the holographic displays in front of her. The salvage operation was in full swing. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she monitored the complex maneuver. Tractor beam at 80%. Target acquisition stable. Viktor Petrov reported from the control station. Lena nodded curtly. Good. Keep the beam constant. We mustn't damage the automaton under any circumstances. Through the observation windows, the crew could watch as the alien mining machine slowly detached itself from the asteroid. The cylindrical object shimmered metallically in the light of the searchlights. The object's surface shows unusual patterns, noted Dr. Asher Singh, the science officer. Possibly some kind of writing or mathematical formulae. Lena leaned forward with interest. Fascinating. Document everything meticulously, Doctor. A slight tremor went through the ship as the tractor beam completely engulfed the automaton. Careful, Lena warned. Stabilize our position. We don't want to risk the asteroid getting too close. The minutes dragged, unlike hours, as the machine was carefully pulled towards the Susquehanna's open hangar. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Only 10 meters to go, Victor announced 9-8. Suddenly, the tractor beam flickered. Lena froze. What's going on? Power fluctuations in the main system, shouted Yuri Volkov, the chief engineer. I'm initiating emergency protocols. Lena's heart was racing. She could only watch helplessly. The valuable machine began to spin dangerously. Boost the beam, she ordered. We can't lose him. Yuri's fingers flew over the controls. I'll give it everything we've got. Endless seconds passed. Then the tractor beam stabilized again, and the bridge let out a collective sigh of relief. Entry into the hangar underway. Victor finally reported, recovery in 3, 2. The machine touched down on the hangar floor with a thud. Lena took a deep breath. Well done, everyone. Secure the object and activate the quarantine protocols. Cheers erupted on the bridge of the Susquehanna as the dangerous salvage operation was finally completed with surrounding success. Lena Schultz breathed a sigh of relief and watched her crew celebrate the moment of triumph. They had retrieved the mysterious drilling robot on the asteroid Laforge 88 intact, just before it could be obliterated by the debris in the cosmos. Viktor Petrov, the lead engineer, stood next to Lena and stared in awe at the screen showing the recovered object. The technology we are witnessing here is undoubtedly of extraordinary fascination. He marveled as he focused his eyes on the object. The seamless construction of the diamond-reinforced outer shell is remarkable and gives it unparalleled. Lena nodded in agreement and took a closer look at the drilling robot. The machine's internal systems and drive were high-tech and embodied a new level of innovation. She sensed the excitement of her crew, as the experts at Susquehanna were certain that they could achieve significant technological breakthroughs by using this drilling machine. Victor turned to the assembled team, his voice vibrating with enthusiasm. We will gain the ability to reverse engineer some groundbreaking technologies and customize them to our needs, he announced confidently. This undoubtedly marks a milestone in our understanding of exotic technologies, a stellar moment that will allow us to conquer the unknown. Lena watched as her crew members' eyes sparkled with excitement. The daring rescue had indeed paid off. The mighty drilling machine undoubtedly held the potential to give the Empire a groundbreaking technological edge. Lena looked ahead with pride and anticipation of the discoveries to come. Now, all that remained was to persistently and methodically unravel the mystery, a task we are fully committed to and will approach with unwavering determination. Hannah Hussein stood before the Imperial Senate, her hands clasped tightly around the edges of the lectern. The great hall was filled with tense silence as the young diplomat took a deep breath and began her report. Esteemed Impreatrix, esteemed senators, she began, her voice firm and clear. I am pleased to inform you that we have made significant progress in analyzing the Gamma language. A low murmur went through the ranks of the senators. Hannah could feel all eyes on her, but she didn't let it faze her. Thanks to our advanced eavesdropping technology, we could intercept and analyze numerous conversations between the Gamma ships, she continued. Our linguists have been working day and night to decipher this alien language's complex patterns and structures. Hannah activated a hologram that displayed a series of alien symbols and waveforms. As you can see, the Gamma language is based on a highly complex system of pitches and rhythms. Any slight change in intonation can fundamentally change the meaning of a word or sentence. She noticed how some senators frowned skeptically while others leaned forward in fascination. So far, we've decoded about 20% of the intercepted communications, Hannah explained. The Gamma seems to be a highly developed people with a rich culture and a complex social structure. Their conversations revolved around various topics, from scientific discussions to philosophical debates. Impreatrix Sevia Heimber leaned forward on the throne. Did you find any clues as to their intentions towards us, Miss Hossein? Hannah hesitated for a moment. Not directly, Your Majesty. The Gamma seems to be aware of our presence, but we have been unable to decipher any definitive statements about their attitude toward humanity. They may view us as another interesting species to study. Nadine Heimber, the representative of the Helix Church, spoke up. Can we be sure that these creatures pose no threat to the genetic purity of our people? Hannah turned to the senator. At this stage, we have found no evidence of aggressive intentions. However, I would like to emphasize that our findings are still minimal. We must proceed carefully and patiently to get a complete picture. As Hannah finished her report, Impreatrix Sevia stood up. Thank you for your excellent work, Ms. Hossein. Please continue your efforts to decipher the Gamma language. The more we learn about these people, the better we can prepare for a possible encounter. Hannah bowed slightly and returned to a seat. She felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. Deciphering the Gamma language was a significant breakthrough, but she knew that they still had a long way to go. As soon as Hannah took her seat, Myra Gupta, the Minister of Economics, stood up. Dear Impreatrix, dear colleagues, she began, I would now like to move on to another important topic, the expansion of our posts. The senators turned their attention to Myra as she activated a new hologram, showing the structure of the Kasach administration. As you know, we have made great progress in colonizing new worlds in recent years, Myra continued. To support and guide this growth, we must also adapt and expand our administrative structures. She zoomed in on a specific area of the hologram. I propose creating a new post C, that of Master Weaver. This position will play a key role in adapting our population to the different environmental conditions of our colonies. A murmur went through the chamber. Some senators nodded in agreement, while others frowned skeptically. I would like to propose Andrea Soa for this important post, Myra explained. Her expertise in genetics and many years of colonial administration experience make her the ideal candidate. Nadine Heimber stood up abruptly. Is it wise to intervene so extensively in the divine creation? The genetic purity of our people is a precious commodity that we should not jeopardize life. Myra met Nadine's gaze calmly. Senator Sember, I assure you that this is not about tampering with our genetic heritage. Rather, it's about giving our colonists the best chance to thrive on their new homeworlds. Under Andrea Sauer's direction, the genetic monasteries will be able to make subtle adjustments that will facilitate life on other planets without altering our fundamental nature. Impreatrix Sevia raised her hand to interrupt the emerging discussion. This is indeed a significant proposal that needs to be carefully considered. Let us vote on whether we should establish the post of Master Weaver and nominate Andrea Sauer for the position. The senators added their voices while Hannah Hussein followed the debate closely. She couldn't help but wonder how this decision with its potential to shape the future of Kasach, would affect the Gamma when they found out about these significant developments. The agenda for the developing society was commissioned at the same time. Andrea Soa stood motionless on the bridge of the EK Ptolemy, instead spellbound at the main screen. A landscape that was both fascinating and frightening revealed itself before her eyes. The barren moon of Pluet, HFY, stretched out below them, a lifeless desert of black rock and deep craters. But amid this desolation, her team had discovered something incredible. "Commander, the scans confirm it," reported Lieutenant Chen in a trembling voice. His hands flew over the controls with a sense of urgency, trying to maintain his composure. "We've found clear signs of life. The sensors are going crazy." Andrea took a deep breath to contain her excitement. Her heart was racing, but she forced herself to calm down. "Show me the details, Lieutenant. Don't leave anything out." Close-ups of a bizarre formation appeared on the screen. Strange, crystalline structures grew up between the jagged rock. They pulsed faintly in an eerie bluish light, faded into violet at the edges. Their movements, almost like slow, rhythmic. "They're not plants as we know them," explained Dr. Stern, the chief biologist. He leaned forward, his eyes wide with amazement. "But they show signs of metabolism and growth. Do you see these rhythmic movements? That could be some energy absorption. We would never have expected it in this hell of a system. The radiation alone should kill off any known life form." Andrea nodded slowly. The discovery was groundbreaking, but also disturbing. Life under such extreme conditions challenged everything they thought they knew about the limits of biology. Meanwhile, on Kasach, Rita Griffin's words echoed through the marble halls of the Imperial Senate, her red hair blazing in the light of the crystal chandeliers. The brilliant scientist presented her latest project with unbridled pride and fiery conviction. Her eyes sparkled behind her horn-rimmed glasses as she spread her hands and unfolded her. "The Climate Control Research Program will give us tools to shape entire planets," she announced, her voice quivering with excitement. "Imagine turning hostile worlds into thriving paradises, deserts that turn into rainforests, icy deserts that become temperate zones," senators murmured excitedly. Some leaned forward, and others exchanged astonished glances. The possibilities seemed limitless, almost frightening in their scope. Some whispered of divine power, others of unimagined economic opportunities. Meanwhile, the distant colony of Scifiaudiobook was a hive of colossal activity. Heavy machines, colossi of steel and hydraulics, rolled relentlessly through the swamps. Their mighty shovels dug deep channels, drained swampy areas, and created square kilometer after square kilometer of new farmland. The roar of the engines, like thunder in the distance, mingled with the screeching of metal saws and the rhythmic pounding of the rams. Baron Alexei Volkov, his uniform immaculate despite the omnipresent humidity, watched the work from an elevated vantage point. His eyes, sharp as an eagle's, took in every detail of the changing landscape. "We are improving the ecological balance," he explained to his assistant. "These marshes were breeding grounds for disease. Soon fields and gardens will flourish." Not far away, an impressive building towered into the sky. The new Gene Monastery of the Church of Genetic Purity dominated the horizon. Its curved shapes and shimmering domes symbolized the progress and worship of genetic science. A helix sister led a group of novices through the sacred halls. "This is where we will unlock the secrets of our genes," she said in a reverent voice. "And one day, we can control our evolution." The young adepts, their eyes shining with excitement, were thrilled at the idea of being part of this great vision. "Hey, I would be happy if you could give my video a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my